Welcome to the Miguel Zakova Show with me, Miguel Zakova, and today we're going to talk about probably the most controversial writer show of all time, Kamen Rider Hibiki. This video is going to be a little different as I feel to actually get across my feelings on Hibiki and talking about his main controversy requires a little bit of a break in the structure that these videos usually have. But even without the title cards I use, sometimes, structure is usually just this introduction, a story breakdown, and then a character breakdown. But here, we're going to start talking about writers, which I probably should have been doing anyway, music, and some hot takes about the collective fact and circulation for the history of Hibiki's second half. Also my own opinions, of course. So let's start by talking about Hibiki's first half.
Kamen Rider Hibiki. この後すぐ
Kamen Rider Hibiki is the story of an average kid, Asumu Adachi, who one day while at a family reunion meets this guy simply named Hibiki, a person who belongs to the organization known as Takeshi, who is not a Kamen Rider but an Oni, warriors who kill monsters in the Makima with instruments. Upon meeting this man and getting caught up in his world, Asumu goes through a journey of growth. As the show takes an interesting approach of following Asumu's journey through school and Hibiki's battle against the Oni as two entirely separate stories most of the time. The stories only really come together when Asumu either gets stuck in a Makima battle or when Hibiki gives him a pep talk about just general life. Both scenarios happening way less often than you would expect, which sucks because of how good of chemistry Asumu and Hibiki have with one another. Asumu being this kind of nervous kid unsure of how to move forward and pursue the things that he wants to do in life, while Hibiki's this chill mentor who simply encourages him to put more work into it if that's something he truly cares about. Like that scene in episode 29 where Asumu apologizes about making Hibiki lose his hat, Hibiki simply tells him he shouldn't focus on the things he lost all the time, on the things he had, genuinely resonated with me. But I'd be lying to say I didn't find a lot of the scenes in between moments like that, where it's just Asumu doing school stuff or Hibiki fighting, kind of boring outside of select highlights here and there. But to move on from that, we have Ibuki and his apprentice, Akira, who are both just kind of okay in my opinion. Like Ibuki's just a cool guy pretty much, and Akira's just kind of an angsty girl. Neither of them are bad, but not super interesting in my opinion, outside of how they compare to Hibiki and Asumu. But Akira, despite being the same age as Asumu, getting actual Oni training from Ibuki as his apprentice, making Asumu think about whether or not he should try to become Hibiki's apprentice. Too bad the show will later introduce another character that makes him consider this choice in a more interesting way. But after them, we have the two ghosts of the season, Zonki and Todoroki, another master-apprentice duo, with Zonki being this very tough but nice instructor to the very awkward and indecisive Todoroki. Like seeing Todoroki genuinely put himself out there once Zonki has to finally give up being an Oni is one of my favorite moments in the entire show. Mainly as I can relate to his struggle of feeling like he's truly not good enough at something you're otherwise pretty good at in all reality. As the show shows us in his first battle alongside Zonki that he was basically saving his master's life. A moment which Zonki saw as Todoroki finally being capable of taking his place. Todoroki didn't see that way until his master decided to retire, just force him to fight in his place, thus forcing him to finally acknowledge the skill and expertise he always had. I also like Todoroki because he's really funny, being this massive dork, obsessively worrying about every little thing. It's probably where I would have ended the video normally, as the rest of the characters introduced in the first half are just not worth talking about in that much depth. And to give you a hint about where the rest of this video is going, these opinions are pretty representative of my thoughts on the characters throughout the whole show, at least to me. But this is where we have to shift to some production stuff for a second as we talk about the changes in staff between the first and second half of the show.
Kamen Rider Hibiki. この後すぐ
The producer of Hibiki's first half was Shigenori Takatera, who didn't even want to make a Kamen Rider show at all. But you can tell it didn't work out given the name of the show and all, but ideas from before it was made into a Kamen Rider show persisted, such as how instead of Kamen Riders, all the heroes are named Oni, along with the use of an older lead and zero infighting between protagonists. Both things which Takatera felt made Kamen Rider feel stale and not worth continuing. Sadly, he was very wrong, as Kamen Rider Hibiki didn't end up doing great, him eventually being replaced by Shinichiro Shirakura from episode 30 until the end. When it comes to why this change happened, there's no clear answer, and how you view the possibilities that are out there, such as low ratings, which isn't true, and low toy sales, which is very true, depends on how you felt about the show's second half. What is important I feel like to acknowledge is that Shirakura and the new writer he brought on, the veteran Kamen Rider writer Toshiki Inoue, tried their absolute hardest to keep the show's spirit alive as much as they could. Even in the face of changes like them not being able to shoot fight scenes in the woods as often, leading to more fights in the city, the removal of the show's very music-like editing style, which had scenes literally timed to the music at points, and the literal changing of the show's instrumental-based opening Kagayaki to the much more generic sung opening, Hajimari no Kimiye, and even the outright removal of the show's ending theme, Shonen Yo, the show still feels like itself in a lot of ways. As at the end of the day, it's still the story of Asumu growing up through his relationship with Hibiki, something that wasn't always guaranteed as Toei and Bandai heavily advocated to get rid of him entirely, them having to literally kill Zonki as a bargaining chip to keep Asumu around. That's not even getting to the most infamous part of the second half, that being Kiryu, who's not even bad and honestly adds to Hibiki's story in more ways than he truly detracts from it.
仮面ライダー響きこの後すぐ
Kiryu is a completely Inoue invention, made due to his feeling that the series was too general in its messaging. His purpose being to disrupt Hibiki and Asupu's relationship, and thus create a more unique take on the theme of bonds for the series. Which, while it fails in some ways, Kiryu is a lot of the time written a little too much like an anime rival for how realistic the series is otherwise. But in a lot of other ways, he succeeds, as he's arrogant and competitive, which contrasts well with Asumu, who's none of those things. A contrast that forces Asumu to confront things in his life that he's been neutral to up to this point, such as his relationship with his estranged father, and like I mentioned earlier, his relationship with Hibiki. As Kiryu, unlike Asumu, is desperate to become an Oni. In a lot of ways, he's much more desperate for Hibiki's guidance and company. Kiryu being deep down just a weak and scared kid who's desperate to take on a role that will make him feel as strong as his late father, who was a firefighter. The only lifestyle gives him that, as he'll be able to protect people from monsters the same way his father protected people from fires. But Asumu doesn't have a desire. Sure, he wants to help people, but not like that. And the show never looks down on him for it. Like, people hate on the final episode, but I don't really get why, as it has this genuinely perfect ending, where Hibiki tells Asumu that even though he wants to become a doctor now, he can still be his apprentice and learn things from him like he did before. As being an Oni isn't the end-all be-all, but just one of the various and valid paths of life. An idea that Kiryu, despite the flaws in how he's written, adds to in a really good way to me. This is the type of stuff that makes me unable to hate Hibiki's second half, because I think despite its problems, it's always trying to respect what came before, and give it as good of a conclusion as possible. The other characters, while not getting as good of an ending as Hibiki and Asumu, I feel like the same applies. Like Zanki literally overcoming death itself in order to help Todoroki after he almost loses the ability to become an Oni forever, and finally fully replaces him as Ra, despite the hard magic angle they add onto the Oni, being one of those choices I think they didn't need to add in the second half. Even Ibuki Akira, who I would say the second half definitely screws over, still at least gets some interesting exploration of some of the backstory hinted at in the first half, with Ibuki feeling like he can't relate to Akira or the other Oni due to being brought up by an Oni family instead of really choosing the path for himself, unlike the others, and Akira considering if her reason for becoming an Oni is valid, if it's only for revenge. The purpose of becoming an Oni is not only to defeat the monsters, but the monster within yourself. It'd be better if she got to end the show getting to transform, and that's something she was dead set on doing. And unlike with Asumu, the show never gives a good reason why she would give up on being an Oni, instead of maybe just change her reason for becoming one. But again, I already said she got screwed over. But I guess that's it for me in Kamen Rider Hibiki. A show which at its best is a generally beautiful show about how people grow and improve over time, but at its worst is just kinda boring, even taking in mind the show's intentionally slow pace. How about I take on the second half, make people rethink it a bit, or at the very least understand where I'm coming from, and thinking that it has merit despite the very crappy reason there's any distinction between the first and second half of the series, like screw Toei and Bandai for that one. That was just me. Leave your thoughts and opinions in the comments below, and also subscribe while you're down there. Miguel Zalkova, out.